Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us again here on the Michigan Science Center's Facebook page and over Zoom for another episode of Echo Live. Today we have another very special program planned for you. We'll be taking another tour through our virtual planetarium with our staff astronomer and solar system ambassador, Paulette. So Paulette is here today with us, and she's going to take us on another very cool program talking about the constellations that we might see in the northern sky today. So hi, Paulette, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. So what are we here to talk about today?
So today we're going to talk about some of our circumpolar constellations, or some of them that are up all year round. Like you said, we're going to be facing the direction north to be able to do that. But let's jump right into our virtual planetarium, because there's one thing I want to show everybody before we take a look at that. So jumping right into our virtual planetarium. There we go. And I want to show everybody one really cool thing up in our nighttime sky that we have right now, which is right up over here. We have the moon. Tonight, the moon is actually going to be full, so you'll be able to see it very clearly up in the nighttime sky. If you go outside around sunset or so, it'll actually be rising right here in the eastern sky. And so that's one of the ways that we know what direction we're facing up in the nighttime sky. But I said we're going to be facing the direction north. So let's go ahead and turn our virtual planetarium around to be able to do that. Now, I showed everybody one great way to be able to find what direction you're facing. Does anyone know another way to figure out the direction that we're facing? Maybe using some of the stars that we can see up in the sky. If you have an answer, go ahead and jot it down in the comments. Again, that question is, what's one great way that we can find what direction we're facing, especially that direction north? Let's see. All right, so again, we're going to find the direction north up in the sky if you have a great way of being able to do that. Someone said a compass. You know what? That is a really great way to see what direction you're facing, but you can actually use the stars. So if we look up in the sky, there we go. We can look for the North Star. That's fantastic. So to find the North Star up in the sky, we're actually going to find something else first. If we look right up over here, we're going to see 7 fairly bright stars. And what we can do with these stars is we can play a game of connect the dots, draw the lines between the stars to form a picture. So the picture that we see up in the nighttime sky is going to look a little bit like that. There we go. Now I've drawn some other lines along with the dipper that we see right there, but this is the Big Dipper, those 7 bright stars. We can use those 7 bright stars, like I said, to find the direction north and our North Star. If we take these 2 stars right here in the bowl of the dipper, we call them pointer stars. We can draw a line through them down to this star right over here called Polaris. Now, some people have told me to find north up in the sky. We can use the North Star. Why do you think Polaris is so important? Some people have been telling me to find the North Star, but what is another name for Polaris, or the star that we have right here? Let's see, again, if you have an answer, go ahead and put it in the comments. The star, like I said, is named Polaris, but people are telling me to look for the North Star. Why is Polaris so important? Very good. This is the North Star. So we have the North Star up in our sky right here. This is directly above our northern horizon. And so that'll be our North Star. It'll help us find the direction north. So if we bring up this constellation, we can see our Little Dipper right there. So we have the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. Now, these are pictures that we see up in the nighttime sky, and most of the pictures that we see are called constellations. Now, some of the pictures that we see are not official. They are something that we call asterisms instead. So they change depending on the culture that you're talking about. So for example, here in the US, we see a Big Dipper. But in England, they see a plow. And in parts of the world, they see a coffee pot up in this part of the sky. So these are something called asterisms because they change depending on the culture, but constellations are the same worldwide. And these asterisms are part of some larger official constellations called Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the big and little bears. So everybody, use your imaginations. Up in the sky, we have a great big bear right there. And a little bitty bear right there. Everybody sees them, right? Okay, it's all right if you don't. It takes a lot of imagination to try and see these pictures up in the nighttime sky. And the best way to use your imagination is to go ahead and close your eyes. And we'll bring up and close your eyes. Everybody use your imaginations. Use your imaginations. Go ahead and open your eyes. And there they are. We have our big and little bears. Now you might look at these bears and think they look kind of funny. Do these bears look kind of funny? Someone said that the Big Dipper looks like a spoon. You're right, it sort of looks like a spoon that you would dip into a pot of soup. A lot of other people think it looks like a kite or just like a pot up in the sky. But what is strange about these bears? What do the bears have that normal bears don't? Once again, what do the bears have that normal bears don't? I'm going to give you a hint for those of you that might not see it. That's right, they have long tails. These bears to me look ridiculous. This one kind of looks like a dog and this one looks like a giant raccoon in the sky. But these bears are supposed to have long tails. That's because a long time ago, a guy named Zeus picked these bears up by their short little stubby bear tails, swung them around his head, and threw them up into the nighttime sky. So that's why they're up in the nighttime sky, and that's why they have unusually long tails. They also fly, you are correct, which is kind of strange for bears, but like I said, it's because they were thrown up in the nighttime sky, and that's why they're up there. So normally bears have short little stubby bear tails, but these bears have nice long ones. If you talk to some Native American cultures, however, they actually don't see these bears with long tails. They see them with normal, short little stubby bear tails. But the three stars that are following them are hunters following the bears around the sky. So interesting little mythology tidbits there. Now, if we take the two stars called the pointer stars and we draw a line through them down, we'll get to this star, Polaris. And if we keep going, we'll get to these 5 bright stars over here. So those 5 bright stars are up in the sky, and they make sort of a shape. And that shape sort of looks like an M or a W or an E or 3, depending on how you're looking at it up in the nighttime sky. But this is actually supposed to be a queen named Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia the queen was a queen in Ethiopia a long time ago. She's up in the nighttime sky, sitting in her throne. So her art looks a little bit like that. And because she thought that she was the most beautiful person ever, for about half of the year, she's actually sitting in her throne upside down. So she has to be put through some things that are very uncomfortable. Right next to that, we'll be able to see another constellation. And this one, to me, kind of looks like a house. So here we have the roof. And then down here, we have the square of the house, and it's up in the sky looking kind of like that. Now, this one is actually supposed to be Cephas the king, again, also sitting in his sky. And so he's also upside down right now, but we have Cephas the king. Now, I see that somebody said they don't look very bright. You know, a lot of people think the North Star is the brightest star up in the sky, but it's actually not the brightest star. It's the 48th brightest star up in the sky. The reason people think it's the brightest is because it doesn't move up in the nighttime sky. It's always in the same spot. So it's sort of like our guiding light here in the northern hemisphere. And we'll talk about why that star is so important after we go through some of the other constellations. But you're right, the stars aren't very bright in this part of the sky. We're also looking at this part of the sky through something called light pollution. So when we have lights on our houses or city lights on the streets, it actually throws a lot of light up into the air and blocks our view of the nighttime sky. If we actually get rid of that light pollution, which I can do here in our virtual planetarium, all of the stars in this part of the sky look much, much brighter now. And you can actually see there are a lot more stars. So to see a view like this, you have to go pretty far away from city lights. But if you are out in the suburbs, this is approximately what the sky would look like. Downtown Detroit, there's even more light pollution downtown Detroit. So I actually can only see a handful of stars from outside my apartment. All right, so here we have the nighttime sky. Like I said, if we were to look at it from way, way, way out in the country. One more constellation that I want to point out to you is right over here. And this is a constellation called Draco the Dragon. Now, some of you might think Draco sounds kind of familiar. If you've read Harry Potter, you'll know that Draco is a character in that book. While Draco, the character in the book, is named after this constellation right here that we can see in the northern sky. And let's see, and the art looks a little bit like that. Oh, so somebody mentioned that the sun is the brightest star. That's right, the sun is the brightest star up in the daytime sky. Does anybody remember from last week? What's this brightest star up in the nighttime sky? We talked about this last week, and it's a star. It's sometimes known as the dog star. Does anybody remember? Let's see, it was a star in the constellation Canis Major. We talked about it last week. Some might even say it's seriously bright. Anybody remember? Which constellation? Or which star am I talking about? Sirius, that's right. It's the star Sirius. And yes, this constellation right here, Draco Malfoy, was named after that constellation. And it does kind of look like, you were correct, it looks like the Big Dipper is riding Draco the Dragon. It's very interesting. So somebody else asked, why do you have to stay away from city lights? And that is a fantastic question. So because of all of the city lights that we have around us, they block our view of the nighttime sky. We can only see the light from the lights around us, and we can't see the light from the stars beyond that. But if we go really far away from city lights to a dark nighttime sky, we are able to see a lot more stars. Like I said, I live downtown, so I can only see about a dozen or so stars at a time. When you're out in the suburbs, you can see many more than that. And then when you're way out in the country, you can see about 6,000 stars with the unaided eye. So we have our constellations in the northern part of the sky. And the really cool thing about these constellations is the fact that they're up all year long. It doesn't matter if you go outside during the winter, the summer, the fall, or the spring, you should be able to find them. They're also something that we call circumpolar. And I'll show you what I mean in just a moment. But before I do, somebody asked how many constellations are there? That is a really, really great question. There are 88 official constellations. Now, to be a constellation, it actually is official by the International Astronomical Union, or IAU, and they are actually just areas of the sky. So if I actually bring something else up, these are the official constellations. These are the official areas of the sky that these constellations exist in. So all of the stars inside of these boundaries are part of these constellations that we see right here. So Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Cassiopeia, we've got Cephas the King, and we have Draco the Dragon. These constellations, like I said, are always up in the nighttime sky. So it doesn't matter if you go outside during the winter, the summer, the fall, or the spring, any time of night, you should be able to see them. They might be in a different orientation though. They might be right side up, they might be upside down. It depends on the time of night and the time of year that you go outside. But if I show you what happens when we go through the course of a day, you might see something really interesting happen. So let's go ahead and speed up time a little bit. There we go. We can speed up time. Notice you can actually see down here in the corner, we're speeding up time quite a bit. I apologize if this makes anyone a little bit dizzy. I know it makes me really dizzy in the planetarium, a little less so on the screen right here. But you'll notice that these stars in this part of the sky circle around Polaris, which is why we call them circumpolar stars, because they circle around it. So from our latitude, all of these stars are circumpolar. It turns out from the latitude of, say, South Florida, the Big Dipper is actually not circumpolar. I lived down there for a little bit and I was like, how do you find the Big Dipper? Well, or the North Star? Well, there is a secret to that, and I can share that in just a moment. So let's go ahead and stop this guy from moving. I'm going to wait till we come all the way back around to where we were before. All right, so we could see that circumpolar motion. Excellent. I'm going to set our date back to today on the 7th. All right, so we can see all of the different constellations that we talked about. And I mentioned that the Big Dipper right here is not circumpolar from everywhere in the United States. Sometimes it actually sets below the horizon. Well, if we take Cassiopeia the Queen, we can see that she has sort of like a right angle right here. And if we use that right angle as the tip of an arrow, if we draw a line backward, we'll get to the North Star. And that's how some people across the United States have to find the North Star. They use Cassiopeia the Queen instead. So we have, like I said, all of these constellations up in the sky tonight. You can see them any time of night, and you can see them anytime throughout the seasons.
All right.
Now, somebody asked.
We've got some really great questions coming in the comments. So if we could have everyone who still has questions, go ahead and type those in the chat feature. We've got a few minutes left in our virtual planetarium, and I know Paulette wants to keep answering your questions. So if you do still have questions about these constellations in the northern sky, send those in the chat on Facebook, send them in the chat through Zoom. And we're gonna just very quickly take this moment, as always, to thank our sponsors of ECHO and of the Michigan Science Center. So keep typing those questions in. We love that you guys are joining us every day for ECHO Live, every weekday at 2:30 p.m. This is all thanks to our sponsors like the DTE Energy Foundation and our individual donors like you, who are funding us and keeping us open and able to provide these programs for free over Facebook and over Zoom. So sorry, Paulette, I'll let you grab back onto the share if you want to share your screen again.
Close yours and I can share.
All right, so we'll keep an eye on those questions. So again, send them in the chat. So Paulette can answer your questions all about these northern constellations. I do have one question to start off. You said that this sky is set for tonight. Could you tell us what time tonight the sky is set for?
We set the sky for about 10 o'clock tonight. It's a time of the evening that can it's a time of the evening that the sky is dark all year round. So I like to stick to one time throughout the whole year.
All right. So someone in Facebook chat asked us, how many types of stars are there?
That is a really, really great question. There are a lot of different types of stars. We have our giant stars, we have our dwarf stars, red stars, blue stars, yellow stars like our sun. And it's less of a type of star, and there's more of like a diagram. It's called the Hertz-Russell diagram, Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. And maybe we could do a program on stellar evolution and types of stars on a different day. So that was a fantastic question. Let's see. Somebody said, how many stars are there? That's a really great question. So somebody asked how many stars there are in the universe, and another person asked how many stars are there. So there are lots of stars in our universe. There's really no good way of answering that question except to say a lot of stars. So the stars in our universe, there are about 600 billion galaxies, about 1 trillion stars in each of them. So if you do the math, it comes out to a number that is just a lot. So what would it look like in Florida? That's a really great question. And I might actually be able to show you what it would look like in Florida. Now, some of our viewers are probably not from Michigan, so they might see the sky a little bit differently than we do. So let me see if I can bring up what it would look like in Florida. And as I keep going, I'm gonna keep talking and answering some more questions. Someone said, is the North Star really important? And it is. It is very, very important. So the North Star is the star that we use to find all of the other to find the direction north. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is what the nighttime sky looks like from Florida, for those of you that were wondering. We'll head back to Detroit. So let's see. Sorry about that. I got a little distracted. So we use the North Star to find the direction north, and it is really important up in our nighttime sky. It's always in the same spot because it's almost directly above our North Pole. And so as we rotate on its axis, it's always pointed at that star. Someone asked, how do people figure out what to name and how to find the constellations? Great question. A long time ago, they made it up. They played a game of connect the dots, drew lines between the stars to form different pictures. So actually, other cultures have different pictures that they see up in the nighttime sky. The official 88 constellations that we use were brought about by the International Astronomical Union using mostly Greek and Roman mythology. Someone else asked, brightest star in the solar system? That's a really good question. Let me give you a hint. Brightest star in the solar system. What do we think might be the brightest star in the solar system? So the system that includes all of the planets and includes another fairly bright star, the sun. That's right. So the sun is the brightest star in our solar system. Really fantastic question. Let's see. What if you can't see the North Star? You know what? I love that question because sometimes you can't see the North Star. But if you can't see the North Star, that means that you're not in the Northern Hemisphere. If you can't see the North Star, you're in the Southern Hemisphere, so you're on the other side of the equator. A lot of people have asked me, is there something that is called the Southern Star? Turns out there's not. There's actually nothing at our South Pole, but you can use the cross, the northern or the Southern Cross, to be able to see the to be able to find the South Pole. It just doesn't have a specific dot at that point. Let's see, where is the Milky Way? That's a really great question because we have our super dark sky right here. So if we look over here, you might be able to see that Milky Band going all the way across the sky. And that is our Milky Way galaxy, the one that we live inside of. How big are stars? So that is a super fantastic question, and it's really hard to answer. So, but mostly my answer to how big are stars are really, 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 really big. So essentially you can fit about 1,000 Jupiters inside of the sun. And you can then fit like 2 of the sun inside of Sirius, and you can fit just all sorts of stars inside of our biggest star called VY Canis Majoris. So again, fantastic question. Basically, stars are really, really, really big, bigger than all of the planets in the solar system combined. And so someone asked what is the biggest star? That would be VY Canis Majoris. The biggest star that we can actually see, though, is probably Betelgeuse, which is in Orion the Hunter. Someone asked, can stars die of disease? Great question. Stars are actually made out of plasma. And so they aren't susceptible to things like disease. So if we get diseases here on the Earth, they're just going to keep on living their life. It's not really life in the way that we think of life here on Earth. And someone said, is there an east or a west star? Great question. So the answer is no. And that's because the stars change throughout the year and throughout the night. So if we look over here to the east, well, we'll be able to see a star right here. That kind of looks like it would be the eastern star. But if we go forward in time, that star isn't there anymore. So there isn't a star stuck in the eastern or western sky. There is one stuck in the northern sky, so you can find it no matter when you go outside. All right, I think we have time for just one more question. Let's see. Anna, is there a question that you think is particularly interesting? Or do you have a question?
Yeah, someone actually, so you've mentioned Betelgeuse and you mentioned Orion a couple of times. And so someone is just curious about what time of year they can see Orion.
That's a really great question. You can actually see Orion in the winter time. So we can still see it because winter basically just ended, so we can still see it up in our sky right now. At 10 o'clock, if you look over in the western sky, you'll actually be able to see Orion the Hunter right over here. So fantastic question. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I've had a great
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us here on Echo Live again today. As always, we love that you join us. If you have ideas for programs that you might like us to do, experiments you want us to try, send them to us. If you're looking for experiments that you can try at home, our website listed here on the bottom. At this website /@home_science, you can find experiments all about these different science topics that you can try at home if you're looking for activities to keep the learning going. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope that we'll see you again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern and every weekday after that. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your Facebook page, And remember to like and follow the Michigan Science Center on Facebook if you'd like to be alerted when these programs start every day. So thank you all so much for joining and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Paulette, so much for joining us too. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.